hopefully that puts you in a little bit of a mood for talking about classic movies and the relevance of classic movies. And again, I said Ron scared me because you talked about cord cutters. When I saw you in there, I took your mental picture so I could have somebody call you. Secondly, he talked about the notion of marketing in the Technicolor world where TCM lives in black and white. It's kind of interesting when you think about TCM living in black and white, because how do we make black and white classic movies relevant today? And I'd like to say we use Technicolor approaches. And this network that is 20 years old as of April of 2014 was literally built by the fans. We've been listening to our fans for 20 years to do the things that you're about to see and that I'm about to take you through. But before I begin, I need to ask, just so that I have a feel for the room, who is a fan of classic movies? I talked to one this morning. Okay, so I got a friendly audience here, right? So if you even think about some of the things I'm going to show you, the perception of classic movies and black and white movies is just for old people. And if you just look at the people who raised their hands, you're not that old. I'll probably be the oldest one in the room. So let's get started. Turner Classic Movies, if I could give you an elevator pitch, let's see, is it not working? Shows 400 movies on average a month, on air, online, and on various mobile platforms. As a result of listening to our fans, we built a 4-day festival in Hollywood, Classic Hollywood, that is in our 5th year. We just finished our 5th Classic Movie Festival. We also go on the ocean, on glamorous ocean cruises, all become theme cruises. We also do cross-country screenings all over the country to sold-out crowds. We also take our fans on tours, bus tours, both in Hollywood or LA and New York City. We have a host of talent that comes to TCM, not only to be part of the TCM story, but also to tell their stories of Classic Hollywood. The organizations that we work with range from NASA to the Academy to AFI, obviously many different partners, including every major studio, which is unique because we're Turner Broadcasting. Why would we work with all these different studios? It's because Turner Classic Movies is peerless. It is the eminent leader in all things classic. And along the way, we won a few awards too. In fact, this month we're going to be picking up our 2nd Peabody Award, which is the highest honor in broadcasting, which is not too shabby for a network that really is built on classic movies, on black and white movies. And that is something for us that started 20 years ago with the pull of a lever to 20 years later, here we are. How did we get here? What did we do along the way? When you think about analytics 20 years ago, and I think that's another part of this presentation that's so important, is how to make it relevant for you based on what Ron just said, because this is just a network, a television network. But we built it into a lifestyle brand, and it just didn't happen by chance. Now, of course, I'll give a prize to anybody who can find me in the crowd. It's kind of like, where's Waldo? That's okay. There you go. I'm up in the front somewhere. But it starts with classic movies. What makes classic movies so relevant today when they were made anywhere from 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago? Classic movies, for the most part, are timeless. They have these enduring qualities that for today's day and age, consumers come to appreciate. It starts with the great directors, from Hitchcock to Spielberg. We know that. Those bodies of work endure. It's also these great performances from classic stars like Cary Grant, Marilyn Monroe, Jimmy Stewart, just to name a few. And the irony, which we have found through our research, is that their Q scores of many of the classic movie stars are higher than those of our current stars, including Brad Pitt and Ellen DeGeneres and Nicole Kidman. It's really amazing to know that these classic performances and these actors really stand the test of time. And then you look at these performances. It's copied. It's repeated. This little scene from Robin Hood was played out by George Lucas in Star Wars. And those of you who are fans of classic movies know what I'm talking about. You've probably seen many repeats and re-airs of certain scenes that have made it into modern contemporary movies. And don't forget, for all those who believe in classic movies as a fashion statement, from Audrey Hepburn, Breakfast at Tiffany, some of the fashion that you see today is because of what was worn in the classics of yesteryear. It has been announced that classic movies are the greatest art form of the last 100 years. And that's all good. But where does it all start? It starts with our classic fans. And again, I made that comment about who you think really watches classic movies. We did an extensive research project to try to understand that. Because you have to know that Turner Classic Movies is uncut and commercial free. So we have no ratings. So those of you who represent advertising agencies, I'm not looking for any ad dollars. My only currency is with the cable operators. So I have to convince cable operators why we are so relevant today and why they should care about us and why they should keep paying our fees in order to bring Turner Classic Movies to the fans. 2/3 of our audience is 18 to 49. The perception would be, the myth would be, that our audience is old because we show black and white movies. But in fact, when we did our segmentation analysis, we learned that the two biggest segments were this 18 to 49. They're active, they're affluent, and they're big. We did another survey to kind of get a reading on how big and how many people watch on a monthly basis. 62 million people will tune in to Turner Classic Movies during a given month. And one of the reasons for that is because a lot of these movies you could kind of come in like a good friend and dip out and dip in and dip out. You don't necessarily have to sit there for 2 hours to watch the entire movie. So Turner Classic Movies is big and it's not small. It's not niche. Now, the two groups that we like to talk about are our culture engagers. There's a classification, again, it's not a demographic, it's not a gender, it's a mindset. And culture engagers are those who want to dig into the essence of the movies. They want to understand what made them work, who starred in them, what were the performances, who were they inspired by. They go pretty deep. And to me, I think of these as the cultural, the curious, the intellectually curious about all things cultural. We also have another group, which is the second largest segment of our audience, which is relevance seekers. The relevance seekers is an audience that they're just dipping their toe into classic movies. They've been introduced to it by a friend or a colleague or somebody along the way where they see some of these movies and it's part of pulp culture. They want to cap a line and use it. They want to remark about a scene. But it's a relevance seeker who's digging into classics. And of course, we love to think that we'll move them up the chain to a culture engager. But these are the two biggest audience segments that we have identified and who we target now for Turner Classic Movies. They're the ones who are paying out of their pocket to come on our cruises. They're the ones who are paying out of the pocket to go on the bus tours and to go to our film crews and to our screenings across the country. Of course, you're going to have Aunt Millie up on the farm who's still going to watch a black and white movie, or you're going to have the film buff who just has to watch a movie, but they'll get them anywhere. What we do so differently than any other network in television is provide context and curation, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's also contemporary Hollywood. Contemporary Hollywood looks to TCM as a network that is preserving the history of Hollywood. And they come to TCM, and I showed that slide in the beginning about those people who come to TCM to tell their stories. But here's a few celebrities who have something to say about TCM.
As a kid, I was immediately drawn to the movies, and my dad loved classic comedies. He'd take us to see Marx Brothers, and I started watching them as a kid and just fell in love with them.
The prism that I saw those films through were the eyes of my father, mostly, who was a big movie buff. And so then I began to follow that lead and watch more and more classic films.
I discovered classic movies from my parents. I could tell from their excitement that they knew something I didn't know, and they were going, wait till you see this.
I've always been not just a fan, but a nerd. I mean, I grew up in a house filled with films, books about films.
It's definitely the school I've been studying my whole life. and I just don't know who I'd be without movies.
I saw it as a kid and it just grabbed me. At the end of this movie, I remember thinking that's what I want to do.
I think it's a kind of an act of self-robbery to watch films today without some sense of understanding where film has come from, because so much of what we see now is derivative or based in what was done before.
I think all the films that I've watched throughout my life have helped me as a producer and a director. I do go back a lot to the films I love and rewatch them because I just get so much out of them.
In my film, Do the Right Thing, there's a character named Ray Rahim, has brass knuckles that says love hate. In fact, he gives a speech, the same speech that Robert Mitchell gives about the value of love hate. Ray Rahim gives it to my character, Mookie.
I think the more classic film you watch, the more you're going to appreciate all the films that you watch.
It's like an entire generation of people facing forward but looking back.
Just some of our more contemporary fans. But when you go forward and you think about the community of fans that do come to TCM, and in this community is because they like to come together and talk about these films, and they like to meet in community. When I talk about that we created this festival with the fans in mind, for years the fans were saying, give us a reason to come together and talk about movies. So we created the festival. And now we have people who come from every state in the country, multiple foreign countries, shelling out $1,200 a pass, paying for their own airfare and their hotel, which is an amazing declaration of their passion for TCM. And it's about engagement. They're socially active. You could go on any social media channel and you'll have viewing parties breaking out when we have certain movies being premiered on any given time during the week.
Like 5 minutes.
And it's also about this notion of emotion. And there are people who literally tattoo TCM to their skin. And then she's just one of them. So what we decided, again, knowing that we needed currency with our cable operators, to say that we were big or that we were young was not enough. Because we knew that they had set-top box data, which we don't get access to. So if I say we have 62 million people watching our network on a monthly basis, they could either agree or disagree, and I would know the difference. So I pretty much commissioned a landmark study to do something that really was essence to TCM, which is the passion. That is our currency. That is what we needed to measure. So how do you go ahead and measure passion for a television network? Well, we commissioned a landmark study on brand passion. And where did I get this concept? It came from sports. Sports does a lot of passion index studies to determine the full consumption of a particular sports property in a given market. I use that same type of thinking to apply to TCM. So we created 50 measures of brand passion. Through a factor analysis, we kind of whittled it down to 10 statements. Statements like this: I feel like this brand was created with me in mind. I enjoy introducing other people to this brand. I can't get enough of this brand. So once we had these 10 statements, we wanted to see how we rated with other brands. So the research company came to us and immediately put us up against other networks. I said, no. That's not the hypothesis. My hypothesis is the fans of TCM are as passionate for TCM as the fans of the NFL are for the NFL. Why not? Why not put ourselves out there? So we took 24 brands, big brands, household names, and said, I want to know how TCM stacks up against these household brands, so then when I do have a conversation with a cable operator and tell them, you'll get a lot of pissed off calls if you turn off TCM. And I wanted to compare it to these brands. So as you can imagine, through the factor analysis, we did a ranking. The first tier, okay, 80 to a 90, Harley-Davidson, Pottery Barn, Coca-Cola, which has been voted one of the top brands always in the world. But Coca-Cola is kind of like a commodity now. It's kind of virtual consumption, so I could see where that ranks. In that second tier, pretty good brands, HBO, ABC, Nike. If we did this study again, HBO may move up because of Game of Thrones and True Detective, but when this study was done, this is where they rated. And of course, in that last tier, there was TCM, second only to Apple, tied statistically with the NFL. Now, when you go to your research group and say, I want to prove that our fans are as passionate for our network as the fans of the NFL are for the NFL, they kind of laugh at you. And I said, well, let's prove this out. Let's kind of see where we stack up. And sure enough, happy to report that our passion index is very strong, very healthy, and has given us some of the language to use with cable operators, which is a double-edged sword. They could look at it and say, well, your fans are so passionate they'll be happy to pay for you on a higher tier. Or we could say, well, or we'll unleash the fans onto your call centers. You could have it either way. Suffice to say, we have a good relationship with our cable operators, and hopefully there's no operators in the room. They were at NCTA this week in LA, so I don't imagine them being here in Austin. But I think we have a really good working relationship, and they understand the power of this brand. So TCM, when you think about what we are and what we do, kind of like the secret sauce, it's important to know how we got here after these 20 years. It's the classic experience. So over the years, what we have built, which has started with Ted Turner's vision of providing these classic movies uncut and commercial-free with the original MGM library, we now work with every major studio, as I mentioned earlier, which creates the most diverse library in all of television. And again, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions as to how then can we go offline and create an SVOD service, which is certainly a thought of ours. But at the same time, we start with the notion that we have this most diverse library. Then, when you think about how we program the network, every day is a theme. This is just a slide to show that we're moving into more contemporary movies, which again, as you think about the time lapse of movies, we are starting moving into the 70s and the 80s, which it's hard to think that those are classics since I grew up with them, but I guess that makes me a classic. But it comes to the thematics, the thematic programming of the network. You literally have every day, every week, every month a festival. That's the secret sauce, the context and the curation. That's what people come in for. If you think about movie services, you could get movies just about anywhere. But the fact that we put them into a contextual sense and bring in experts to talk about those movies, whether it's through 31 Days of Oscar, which many of you are probably familiar with, to Summer on the Stars, it gives a reason for people when they come in, they understand what's taking place. It's also then telling stories. And we have some of the amazing greats of Hollywood telling the stories of Hollywood and creating original productions that allow us to create these, these documentaries, these Emmy Award-winning originals that also populate our air. The classic experience also includes all these different guest programmers that come to the air, but it also starts with our hosts. Those of you who remember Robert Osborne, know Robert Osborne, he started with the network. 20 years ago, he's become the ambassador, he becomes the face of TCM. It's also Ben Mankiewicz. The thing that's so unique about both Ben and Robert is that between the two of them, they've done 71,000 separate intros to the movies over the last 20 years. And not one of them is the same. And why is that? Because if you are a discerning movie fan, you would know coming in and out whether or not Robert's talked about a certain thing before. And that's what Robert does. He makes it a point that everyone is a different snowflake. He'll tell you about 3 people that he thinks about when he puts together his scripts. He thinks about his aunt on the farm, kind of like the Aunt Millie type who just wants to see a movie and give me a little bit of information about it. He talks about that aspiring film student in LA who really starting to get really excited, needs to have a little bit more depth. And then he talks about the film critic who has a lot more information so that if I do not provide something that is different, then he'll just scoff at our presentation. So he thinks about that for every script that he prepares. And we have every one of these scripts and every one of these intros in archives. Which led us to this. Because I know when you look at your program, there's this crazy title for my presentation. And to me, it's just the story of TCM. But when you talk about data and analytics that led us to technologies, our fans helped us build our TV Everywhere app. It is the most robust app in all of television. And it's a movie lover's delight. So if you have not downloaded Watch TCM, you need to download Watch TCM. Not only does it have an East Coast and a West Coast live stream, it also has over 100 movies on demand. It has incredible galleries of information, including poster art. It has a social chatter or social media component where you could talk about the different movies that are being shared. And it is by far one of the most impressive pieces of technology built with the fans in mind. For years and years and years, we received commentary in our fan forums and from our call-ins that fans are looking for a way to watch the movies online and obviously through technology. This is what they've been asking for. This is what we built, and this is what we're delivering to them. Now, of course, Ron talked about the cable operators and cord cutters. In order to access this, you have to authenticate, which is a terrible word. I know that. We all go online banking, we do online retail, and I think the word is you sign on. But no, the cable industry, we authenticate. So the difference between sign on and authenticate is just a poor choice of words. But that's what you do. You just sign on and say, hey, I'm a Comcast subscriber, I'm a Dish subscriber, or I'm a Time Warner subscriber, and you have access to TV everywhere.
TCM is much more than a network.
TCM is absolutely a community.
TCM is a blast.
The TCM Plastic Film Festival is so amazing because you're not only watching some of your favorite movies, but you're watching it with people who appreciate it as much as you do.
When the curtains part and the credits start to roll, you get goosebumps.
It's always such a thrill, especially on a cruise, to have the movie stars there talking about their films.
You're with literally thousands of people that like the same stuff you do, so you're not alone. So that's a great feeling.
It doesn't surprise me at all how young some of the classic film fans are.
Ta-da! It's not just a channel that shows movies. I've been able to meet so many people thanks to them.
It's like spending time with family that you've never met.
I feel like TCM creates these opportunities for us to all come together.
And ways of sharing the community outside the network.
There's always a source where there's classic movies that you can watch anytime, anywhere.
TCM is a home.
I don't even bother with any other channels, I only watch TCM.
There's always something great to check out, be it an old favorite or something that I've never heard of.
The more you watch it, it becomes part of your lifestyle.
I think I decorate my life with TCM.
I love TCM.
I love TCM.
I can't live without TCM. TCM is the reason why I have a television.
I love TCM. I swear I do.
I obviously hit the button pretty, before I could introduce this piece. This piece was actually produced from the winners of our 20th anniversary fan guest programmer promotion that we did. And we asked fans all over the country to submit a video, not just a essay or a reason or a tweet about why you want to be a guest programmer. They had to demonstrate why they wanted to be a guest programmer. And when you ask for a video or UGC, the bar of submission is pretty high. We had over 350 submissions, and from those submissions, 20 people were selected to be a fan guest programmer as part of our 20th anniversary this year. And so while we had them in studio, we had them obviously produce that piece, which again is a reflection not only of the youth and the vitality, the mindset, the lifestyle aspect of Turner Classic Movies, it also demonstrates the passion that people have for classic movies in general. So for the most part, in conclusion, knowing that this is a data conference, and again, I know there's a big question, but is it data, is it data? But the data conference on how we are using fan information, how are we using analytics to make decisions, to create conversions, whole different set of conversation about TBS and TNT as commercial networks, but from a Turner Classic Movie perspective, for us, it's all about listening. We have e-commerce initiatives, we have publications, we have a now playing guide, and all that information, that data is collected. We have one-on-one conversations through that, through our online blogs and our forums. We've created personal ambassadors within our universe where we have direct conversations with them. And the many things that we do on air and then obviously offline relative to these events is because of the fans who had asked for them. And over the years, we've just accumulated this information, this data, in order to do the things that the fans are asking for, which I believe right now TCM is at a strength, not only in a purity of a brand in terms of the delivering on its promise of delivering movies uncut and commercial free, but also giving fans a unique opportunity to gather, to connect, to engage, and to be part of the network, which is so unique to anything that's out there in television, which is why we like to say it's not a network. I mean, it's a great network, but it's not just a network. It's actually a lifestyle brand, and we am happy to bring TCM into the lives of all the fans around the country. As it relates to our operators, where our currency and our conversion needs to take place, these are the ways that what we're doing in order to make sure that that conversion happens when we have our one-on-one negotiations to keep TCM on that basic tier. So with that, I'm getting a look to say, open it up for questions.
Just wait for the mic. Give it up for Jeff Gregor, by the way.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Elena Cloud. I work for an agency called Momentum Worldwide.
I know that agency.
Yes. So, selfishly, we sit in the experiential space, so you'll know why I'm going to ask this question. I thought it was really interesting, all the offline activity that you're doing to build brand. And I was curious, when you were talking about that passion research, whether or not you were able to measure the lift that you got in terms of that fan passion as a result of that offline activity. Were you able to baseline pre versus post? And can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we do. But from the passion index was more of a way to give a new metric with the operators as part of our negotiations. But we do surveys, obviously, from every land-based event that we do or offline event that we do. And every survey from the first one we did in Hollywood on the first festival to the fifth one, we take all that information into consideration as we plan the one going forward. The thing that's amazing is obviously the repeat customers, back to use cases. It's not about devices, it's actually about the use cases. So by having a relationship with those consumers, those viewers, those fans, we're actually able to send them information prior to open public sale. And we have, a pretty robust plus 10, 15%, depending on the cruise and the festival, in terms of repeat customers, which is pretty amazing. And then we have about 100 people over the 20-some thousand that in total attendance that come to the festival that have come to every single event, whether it was the cruise and or the festival. So the whole point is that customer database that is basically those who've dipped into their pocket to buy one of our experiential events, they're our preferred customers, and we go back to them early for any new events that we're doing. So does that kind of answer the question a little bit versus the passion index? Because our fans know that they're passionate. That's why they're doing it. We need that for people that are naysayers and skeptical and need to have a perception change. Now, did you guys all recognize a lot of those movies? Could you name them out loud? I was going to say to you as we were going through it, shout out the movies. It wouldn't interfere with me at all, but I forgot to do that. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Michael Hartman. I'm the CEO of Amy's Ice Creams here in Austin. My question is about the Passion Index. I'm very curious about the research method of how you measured that, whether it was in person, in a focus group situation, online, and did every participant get to rate, or did they have to pick 3, or just pick 1? What was the methodology? Because I'm very interested in those results.
Yeah, the methodology, it was a survey, and we did a survey with over 3,000 people, so it had the statistical significance. We gave them, obviously, the these range of questions or statements, we call them passion statements, that through the factor analysis came down to the top, you know, the top and bottom kind of were thrown out, and this as essence of what brand passion meant in terms of through the factor analysis, and then we applied those questions against these brands by just random consumers. So it wasn't necessarily a fan of TCM or a fan of the NFL. It was a random survey with those questions, and that's how they rated you know, each of the brands. Now, they didn't have to do all 24. You know, there was some sort of, and again, I can't get into the actual specifics of the survey, but they, you know, because you just couldn't do all 24. It was like a handful of brands that each survey included. Any other questions?
I think that does it. Thanks so much, Jeff Gregor.